Hello, sir. Good evening. Yes, sir. Raman, sir. Good evening. Good evening, sir. Yeah. So, good evening, sir.
Hello.
I think your voice is a bit low.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Good evening, Ramesh Babu sir.
Yes. Now, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Little low in the volume, so
Okay. So, I think I have put it into maximum. I don't know. Sometimes doesn't work. Sir, good evening, Dr. Subbu. Good morning. Yeah. Hey, good evening, Rambabu. Yeah. Think. Sir,
Good
good
evening,
evening.
sir.
Yeah. Good
Yes,
evening,
sir.
sir. Yeah. Yeah. Good evening.
Yes, sir.
I think today's speaker is Mr. Vaman Kulkarni. So, just wanted to introduce after the students join. Just we'll wait for a couple of minutes, sir.
sure, sir.
Yeah, just give us at least maybe 5 minutes later we can join.
Yeah.
You should set up a incentive program, like a prize.
Okay, yeah.
Those who sign up 2 minutes before get 1 lakh rupees.
I think that won't work here, sir.
Well, you never know. Money talks everywhere.
Yeah, that's true. Good evening, Professor Rajadurai.
Sir,
Dr.
good evening, sir. Good evening. Good evening.
Yeah, Dr. John. Good evening. Good evening, Dr. John. Yeah. Rambabu, good evening.
Good evening, Ramesh. Good evening, and
Good evening.
everybody.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Good evening to everybody.
Yeah, good evening, John and others also. Good evening, Mr. Kadireshan. Yeah. Yeah, Srikanth, you are there, no? So,
Yes, sir, I'm here.
shall we start? Yeah.
Yeah, we can start.
Introduction of the speaker now. So, Mr.
Yeah.
Vaman.
Good evening, everyone. So we welcome you to the fifth talk of this Kite Platform webinar series. Today we have with us Shri Vaman Kulkarni, who has nearly 3.5 years of hands-on experience in the field of additive manufacturing.
No, decades of experience, I think.
Yes, sir, 3.5 decades of experience in additive manufacturing. He graduated from UBC Bangalore and completed his master's in Systems and Control Engineering from IIT Mumbai. He then moved on to work on DRDO and later in Honeywell, wherein he has held several positions as large complex programs and also served in various leadership positions. He has received several awards both in DRDO as well as in Honeywell, and he has immense experience in working on large programs such as Cavalry Engine, A350, A320 Neo, B377 MAX, and other aerospace systems. He played a key role in adopting additive manufacturing technology for prototyping, tooling, and production parts in Honeywell, and he also set up the state-of-art additive manufacturing lab in Honeywell, Bangalore. So we welcome you, sir, to share your experiences and thoughts in this area of additive manufacturing and its implementation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Srikanth, for a nice introduction. Thanks to Professor Ramesh Babu and team for giving me this opportunity. The additive manufacturing is not a new technology. It's been there for almost last 35 years plus, actually. But why we are talking today? We are talking today because the materials which we can do the 3D printing today, or the manufactured by additive manufacturing, that has gone into the metals, actually, the actual metal alloys which have been used in various industries, whether it is automobile or it is in aerospace or in medical. So we have been, we are able to use the actual alloys using additive manufacturing. That's the paradigm shift which has happened in last 8 to 10 years. So the focus on additive manufacturing considerably increased with metal printing coming into picture. So in my experience, in fact, it was in 93, 94. That was the time when, as part of the Cavalry Engine, we are developing the integrated nozzle actuation system, which has an integrated hydraulic power pack, and it was done through the Allied Signals from USA. That is where the entire design of a complex pumping system with the housing, how additive manufacturing was very effectively used. So it's a pump housing with a lot of internal passages and drilling the holes to connect the thing. So it was a very, very complex part. So multiple times they did the prototyping of that with the plastic material at that point of time. So that helped to finalize a lot of those the hydraulic manifold passages inside that complex housing. Otherwise, they have to make that part which is out of a casting, and then they have to face the problem and then go through the design iterations to modify that. So really, the additive manufacturing at that point of time helped to visualize the part. It is a non-functional part because it is made out of plastic. The original the material is the aluminum alloy, but it definitely helped in simplifying the design process and cutting down the cycle time and making it. So that was my first exposure to the additive manufacturing. At that point of time, I was always thinking that at some point of time, in the next 10 years or 15 years, we will be able to make the part out of the actual alloy which is being used in that part, so that we can really take it to the production level. But it took some time before we got in there. This was in around 2013-14. I moved out of DRDO and I joined Honeywell. And Honeywell had started looking into additive manufacturing almost around 2010 onwards, but we had not made a big investment in the area of additive manufacturing. It was around 2014 when it was decided that they should have an additive manufacturing technology centers in all the global places, including India, China, and Europe and US. So that's the time I really got into the depth of additive manufacturing and started looking into the various aspects of additive manufacturing. So as we started looking into the setting up the lab in Bangalore, we started exploring the additive manufacturing infrastructure which is available in the country. At that point of time, there were hardly 2 or 3 people, and they also had just started. Maybe some people had placed an order for the machine, and some people had the machine, but still they are not commissioned it. It was one of them was Wipro, and then another one was the Indo-German tool room in Ahmedabad. We were the third people. Initially, our assumption, or everybody's assumption of additive manufacturing is you just have a machine and then you have the CAD model, you feed the CAD model into the machine, and then you get the finished part. So that's what everybody thinks. But as we started looking into it, it is a real technology. So we will get into that and then see what really additive manufacturing can do. Definitely there are benefits, there are a lot of applications, but there are quite a few challenges which also have to be dealt with it. So what I will cover in the today's topic is we'll briefly look into the additive manufacturing process and what are the benefits and applications. And there are different types of AM processes. As I told, initially it used to be called as the stereolithography, and then subsequently we got into the laser printing, and so we will look into the different types and the materials what we can handle, and then we'll have applications. Many of the examples what I may talk maybe from the aerospace industry because that's where I come from, but they're all very, very relevant today for any other industries, and there are a lot of applications in other areas like automobile or in the health and medical sectors where it is being very, very effectively used. I feel the design for additive manufacturing is very, very key, especially the students who are there today in the call. So they should adapt themselves to the additive manufacturing, understanding the design for additive manufacturing areas, and then the approach they need to follow so that they get the best benefits out of additive manufacturing. And at the end, we'll see what are still the challenges which needs to be addressed. So most of you are aware of the additive manufacturing process. Conventionally, what we do is a subtractive way of manufacturing. You take a raw material and then take out the material to get to the shape and size what we want. But in additive manufacturing, you build the part layer by layer, and finally get the finished product. In the process, we are not wasting any material, and you are able to do this directly taking the CAD model as the input. And of course, we definitely need the material with which we are printing. There are a range of materials today where we can do. It could be many of the metal alloys, the plastics, the ceramics, and even the composite materials can be printed today with additive manufacturing. The process in all these things it looks simple, but as I explain this process, I will also talk about the complexity which is involved in each of these process steps. So you have the 3D model, the model which you were all been using the CAD for creating these models. From the CAD model, we typically have to convert it into a conversion file, which the machine interfaces can understand. Most of the machines can understand STL file. And today there is a very specific thing which is for additive manufacturing. That's interface which is used. But once we have that file, there is a pre-processing which is involved. This is very, very important. There is a lot of learning which is involved in pre-processing the models. The reason is as you visualize when printing of these parts, it can be printed in multiple orientations. So it can be printed horizontally, it can be printed vertically, or at any other angles. So what is the best way to print this part? So that is where that initial pre-processing is involved. And many of the overhang portion of the component that needs to be supported, because we are using the raw material, which could be either a liquid or a powder, or even if you are using a solid material, because the way the part is produced is it goes through the different phases of the material. So it needs to be supported. What is the best way to print that part with minimum support? Because the support is not part of the component. Ultimately, it has to be removed during when we finish the part. Ideally, we should not have any supports, but which is not practical. We need to provide some support. So, and then the layer thickness, what needs to be built, and also it goes through a sort of a heating and cooling process as you build the part. So there has to be a good transfer of heat which has to happen in that process. Otherwise, you may likely to have a lot of cracks or the blowholes which could be there in the part. So pre-processing plays a very important role. And then, of course, we build the part with the machines, whether it is plastic or ceramics or any of the metal alloys. We build the part. And when you build the part, we may not be able to arrive at the surface finish what you want, or you may not be able to have the dimensional accuracies what you want, or it may not have the material properties exactly what you are looking at. So there is a post-processing which is involved after you build the part. So you need to go through the cleaning process, the post-curing process, typically could be an annealing process or any other heat treatment things what you do. And then the finishing process could be just to attain the surface finish what you want, or to achieve the dimensional accuracy is what you want. So we need to minimize that post-processing definitely, but there will be some post-processing which is essential. So that's the technology and the process which needs to be understood by everybody so that you succeed in building the part to the requirements. So there are quite a few benefits of additive manufacturing. Why? That's the reason why everybody is talking about additive manufacturing as part of Industry 4.0 today. As part of the smart manufacturing, additive manufacturing will be very, very key, because you are able to make a part which can give much better performance, which otherwise was not possible with the conventional machining, or even if it is possible, it used to take a lot of time and it was not cost effective. But with additive manufacturing, it has become much simpler to achieve those. So there are a lot of innovative products which are coming out using the additive manufacturing. We'll see some examples. And we can definitely make a lightweight parts. Either it could be because of topology optimization, or it could be because we are using some of the lattice structures. We can really come out with a lightweight parts using additive manufacturing. And then we can also consolidate the parts. Say earlier you used to have that assembly which consists of maybe 50 or 100 parts. There are quite a few examples how that can be completely consolidated and made into one single part. So we'll also see some of those examples. Definitely we don't need any tools as part of additive manufacturing, and the wastage of material is also very, very less, and we can make a complex part much easily. And we don't need to have a large inventory for these parts, because it's almost like you get an order to manufacture and maybe within 2 or 3 days you can have the finished part ready. So it avoids having that inventory management piece of it. So there are multiple applications of this. In fact, the right-hand side, what you see, the staircase model. In fact, I like this model very much. The rapid prototyping and tooling is a very quick example of where additive manufacturing can be easily used. And it could be for as part of new product development. And I talked about the complex pump housing, which I mentioned in the beginning. It could be because to evaluate the assembly trials, or you want to quickly take a part to the customer demos. It may not be a non-functional part, or it could do some minimum functioning, but you can do all that evaluations as part of the prototype activities. In fact, we can also, with the metal printing coming in, we can do a lot of functional tests also with the additive manufacturing. The final production part may not go through additive manufacturing, but you will be able to quickly do the design evaluations with additive manufacturing. It considerably reduces the cycle time as well as the cost. The tooling is the other area where we can quickly do the tooling. In fact, some of the assembly tools or the die tools or the fixtures required for manufacturing, typically many times that takes a lot of time and the cost. We can quickly get it done through the additive. The third piece is very, very important, making a production parts. So the production part of the existing designs, we are really not making any changes to the design, but the current way of making that part, whether it's a casting or a forging, it is time involved, and you want to simplify that. So you are, without making any design changes, you are doing, that's a direct part replacement what you're talking about, or it could be part consolidation, but it's finally a production part. It's easier to implement because you are not doing any other design changes. But the last piece, which is we make a design changes which takes all the benefits of additive manufacturing, and it also addresses the additive manufacturing process requirements. It becomes much easier to print that parts. So that is where we will talk a little more about the DFAM piece of it, how we can incorporate as part of design for additive manufacturing features into the design. So those are the different areas. There are quite a few industries which have adopted to this. Aerospace is, of course, one of them, which is in the front to leverage it, because the weight is one of the key things there, and then that always looks for a better performance. So keeping that in view, the aerospace as well as the space industries are in the front. But automobile has been using it for all our new product development initiatives, and wherever we have a high-end automobiles, high-end cars, because the volumes are less, so they have all been producing the production parts also out of additive manufacturing. Whether it's a metal part or the plastic parts, there are a lot of production applications which are also there. Medical industry is the other one key thing, especially the dental industry, as well as some of the fixtures which they want to use it. So medical industry has been using the additive manufacturing also very, very effectively. So the different processes which are involved in the additive manufacturing, I'll not get into the details, but I will briefly explain the photopolymerization, which is the initial one which started about 35 years back, the stereolithography which I talked about, where the material is in the form of a liquid. And then we use some of either the light source or the thermal source to solidify that part to the shape and size what we want. Because of that, typically this is limited only to either the polymers or the plastic materials. The material extrusion, one of the key aim process is the fused deposition modeling, FDM normally called as, where the material is in the form of a solid wire, and then that wire gets the heated, and then it melts, and then through the nozzle we move the nozzle to the shape and size what we want. It's been very effectively used, and for both the nylons, plastics, as well as the polymers, but now it is also slowly getting into the metal printing. Direct energy deposition is more like a powder, and then you use a laser source to melt it, and then through the nozzle you deposit on the surface. The direct energy deposition has been there, but it's typically used more for only for the part repair applications rather than the full product development. Sheet lamination is where we have the thin layer of sheets, and then you use those sheets to layer by layer to build the shape and size. So again, the application is very limited as part of this sheet laminations process. The material jetting has becoming very, very popular today. It could be the inkjet printing or the multi-jet modeling. The reason why it is becoming more popular is you can have the multiple inkjets to have the different materials together to build the part. So it's becoming it's very, very popular. So you especially limited to the plastic as well as the polymers, but it is definitely an area where it is a lot of production parts are also being done out of material jet. The binder jetting is where we use some sort of a cohesive material to bind the particles together, and then you go through the process to remove a lot of that adhesive material as part of that. Binder jetting, the technology is developing very rapidly, mainly because we can produce very large parts using binder jetting in a very short time. So there are a lot of initiatives which is there around the binder jetting today. The powder bed fusion is the one which is very, very widely used. It could be the laser or with the electron beam melting. So the laser or the electron beam is used to sort of take the powder to the molten state, and then again you cool it and then solidify it to have the shape and size what you want. So typically most of these things is done in an inert atmosphere, and then you achieve that. So this is the most widely used, especially for metal printing applications. In fact, powder bed is also used for some of the other powders like PEEK or any other Teflon related things. So it's also in the form of a powder, it's being used. So this shows that the material in what form it is. In fact, green color shows that it is in the powder form, and the blue shows that it is in the liquid form, and the red shows that it is in the solid form. So the raw material in all the three states is being used in additive manufacturing, and the processes which we talked about earlier, we saw that how each of these raw materials is ultimately getting converted into the final product what we are looking at. I'm not going to talk about this, a very busy slide on the materials, but the polymers, metals, ceramics, and composites, and then you see the various AM processes which are listed. And what is the material what we are looking at? A simple example, if you look at for the metals, the SLM process, if you look at it, we can do it out of stainless steel, we can do the precipitation hardened steel, we can do the cobalt chrome, the nickel alloys, the titanium alloys, the aluminum alloys, the maraging steel. So there's the large group of materials which are now, and it is expanding. Today, copper also can be printed through this DMLS process. So there is a lot of research which is happening around these things to get to the new materials using this technology. So this is a compilation of that information. So we will talk about a little more applications. As I mentioned, some of these applications could be for aerospace, but definitely a similar thing holds good for the other industries also. And one of the example what you see on the top left hand corner, which is an high pressure turbine blade. Typically, this high pressure turbine blade goes through 3 or 4 design iterations before the design is frozen. The reason is, one is the blade profile itself, which gives the aerodynamic performance. The other one is these turbine blades, they see a very high temperatures. close to about 1700 to 2000 degrees Kelvin. That's the temperature what we are talking about. So because of that, there is a lot of internal cooling passages which are there, which will still keep the temperature of the alloy to the level what it is needed. So to optimize the aerodynamics as well as the temperature to which what it can withstand, it goes through the 3-4 iterations. Most of these blades are cast. So to finish the design iterations, going through that casting process, making the prototypes and then doing the testing, it's almost like a 3-year what it will take. But with additive manufacturing, you are able to make the blade and then do the testing. In fact, the 4 design iterations could be completed in about 8 weeks of time against 3 years what it typically will take. And whenever you go through the casting process, you need to have the tools and make that part. For a smaller volume, it definitely costs very high, the casting process. So, and the initial evaluation for prototypes, you may be maximum making 100 or 200 blades. So that's where, as a prototyping, additive manufacturing becomes very, very effective. So we can reduce the cycle time by more than 70%. And then the cost reduction is also close to 60 to 70% of cost reduction, what you can do. And you'll be able to take it to the customer much faster as part of this. A similar example is the second stage HPT nozzle. So again, it sees very high temperatures, and then we need to a complex geometry. It can be made only by casting. So that's the cycle time which is involved is very, very high. There are other examples which are also seen here, some of the air data probes or some of the turbocharger housing, what you can see, or the impeller blades. So these are all the things which the additive manufacturing is effectively used using the prototyping. In some cases, we may not use the metal material. We may still be good ahead to go with the plastic material, but you can go ahead and do the assembly checks, trials, or if you you want to do some winding around the bobbin, you can do that and then finalize on the electromagnetic performance of that. As part of Honeywell, we did it for any of the solenoid designs. So this is an area where you use a plastic material and then do all the other assembly checks and evaluations, and then you get it to the finalize the design and then go through your production process. Tooling is another area where additive manufacturing has helped a lot. In fact, Honeywell has used additive tooling to a large extent with additive manufacturing. A simple example is a flow mixer, which is required as part of the test facilities to test some of our flow meters. We could make this flow mixer design using additive manufacturing. It's part of test facilities, but it's required to test your flow meters to straighten the flow and other things. So we could quickly do it. Or if you are having a pressure measurement, a rake, which measures the pressure at different length along the blade. So we can make some of those rakes using the additive manufacturing. A very quick and efficient way to make those tooling requirements. And at the same time, it can considerably reduce the cost. In fact, this is a very good example which industry has adopted. This is called as a conformal tooling. So typically, even if you are using investment casting to make some of these plastic parts, almost more than 50% of the time is using cooling those dies. So the reason why we cannot improve that is the cooling passages which are there, that if you are using conventional process, it has to be some straight holes or the inclined holes, but it cannot be curved holes. So with the additive manufacturing, you are able to increase that cooling rate by you having a complex cooling passages, and then you can improve the production rate by almost by 150%. In fact, this is one of the things which we used it in one of our safety devices, and then we could achieve an increase in the 150% increase in the production rate, and work very closely with the investment casting supplier to actually implement it. The part repair is another area where additive manufacturing can be very easily used. If you have a blade which is worn out, and that worn out part you can trim it, and then on top of it you can build it, and then get to the final dimensions what you want, and then you can do it. So this is a research process which is getting finalized today, and it can be very effectively used. And another area is similar to that is the incremental printing. So this is one which we very effectively used on our turbocharger. In fact, we made this turbocharger for Honda. And then Suzuki wanted a same turbocharger, but their end fittings is different because they need to package it to their assemblies. So if you have to make another housing with a different end connection orientations, it would have taken at least 4 to 6 months for us. So by going through the casting process. So what we did is we took that existing turbocharger, which we had made for Honda, you take off that existing flange and then rebuild on top of that. And then we offer it to the customers. So what could have taken about 6 months of time, we could give it in less than a month. And they could do all that assembly trials and then test it. And so this helps in quickly meeting the customer needs very fast. In fact, the part repair technology with using additive manufacturing has been fast developing in all the MRO shops today. And then this is being very effectively used. GE uses it very effectively. Pratt & Whitney uses it very effectively. So it's an area where additive has been very effectively used. So what is happening in the country on additive manufacturing? First of all, there are a lot of people who have invested to provide additive manufacturing as a service. So there are quite a few people who are available today, and they want to leverage these technologies. I will say that easily more than about 30-40 service centers are available today, including both metal as well as the plastic printing services what they provide. Some of the examples what I have shown is the real industry examples. The high pressure compressor, this is for one of the HAL things which Wipro developed. Similarly, the starting nozzle, this is again for HAL, which was done by Objectify actually, is one of the service providers. And for space applications, this is another feed cluster which was developed using aluminum alloy. Automotive example is oil intake manifold with an aluminum alloy. They could develop this whole thing in 1 week's time. A copper heat exchanger, as I told, copper is also now being material which is which can print it. So a lot of research happened, and finally the DMLS process is being used even for copper alloy. So a good amount of examples. In fact, healthcare also you can see this example where you can do it through you take the CT scan from convert that into a CAD model, and then you customize it to the shape and accuracy is what we want, and then we can develop it. So this helps for that initial trials, and you can finally have a product. And in fact, a lot of implants are made out of titanium and other things using directly additive manufacturing. So apart from this service providing, so there is a lot of developments which are happening on the AM hardware as well as on the software. Today there are at least 2 companies who are developed the AM machine which can print the metals using the DMLS technology. One is done by Intech Additive Solutions, and the other one is the ACE. So they have the machine today, which is more or less having the similar performance to the imported machines, which we were using it from either from EOS or from Concept Laser, or from GE now has taken over Concept as well as the Arcam thing. So we have the capability to build the machine here, and then the raw material which is being used. So that material is also is available in the country today. It also depends on the volumes which is required, so that this can expand, and then more and more people can invest in these areas. There is a lot of opportunities of innovation as well as research and development which can happen in these areas. On the software side, as I told, the pre-processing is a tool which is required, and there are people who have developed the tool. One of them is the Optomet by Intech Additive Solutions, who are developed. It can optimize the orientation. It can optimize on the supports which is required, and then it can also do a lot of distortion analysis as part of the AM Builder tool which is available. So a lot of activities happening in the country. They need a lot of trained resources to do this. So the youngsters have enough opportunity to get into this area, which the additive manufacturing today has a growth CAGR of close to around 20%. So that's what is expected. Last couple of years, because of COVID situation, it has slowed down, but it's a growing technology, and it needs a lot of trained manpower to take it to the next level. So that's the first part which I wanted to cover on the additive, its applications, the process and all. Maybe next 10 to 15 minutes, I'll talk about the design for additive manufacturing, the areas which can be leveraged to get the better product using additive technologies. The most important thing, as all of you know, that it's a free form of fabrication. So it doesn't need any tools or anything. So the typical constraints we used to have with the conventional manufacturing, whether it is milling, machining, or casting or forging. So because we don't need any tools, so there is no, practically there is anything and everything can be printed. So we can get a better performance, we can have the reduced weight, but the design also should be suitable for additive manufacturing. So we talked about the supports, and it should be reliable and consistent. So every build what you print, it has to be successful. So because of, we need, as I told, it goes through a thermal cycle. So that stability is very, very important to finalize the process. And we should make sure that we were able to build it much faster, and then the power wastage is minimum. So as a young engineer, if somebody wants to get into the additive manufacturing, he has to do some of the unlearning of the conventional DFM, which he is aware of, so that those constraints doesn't exist for additive. And maybe definitely they have to think out of box, because anything and everything is possible. So do the out of box thinking will help in coming out with the innovative designs. Some of the areas where DFM should need to be considered while you start designing any product, any component. The first thing, which is the topology optimization. In fact, many of the analysis tools, they have been providing this topology optimization. It's been there for last 20-25 years. It's not a new thing, but there is a limited use of topology optimization happening today, because whatever you make it out of this, either it is too expensive to make that part, or it is not possible with the conventional manufacturing. So with additive manufacturing, it has opened up a new chapter, completely new chapter using of topology optimization. So the process here is you have a CAD model, and then the CAD model, you do the finite element analysis, and you know the areas where it is highly stressed and where it is the stresses are very less. And the areas where the stresses are very less are the areas where you can take out the material. So you can remove the material in those areas where there is very less stresses, and you ultimately make sure that it still meets all the requirements, and then you optimize on the design, and then you again do the finite element analysis, and you ensure that the part is able to meet all the loading requirements, and then you finalize on that design. So because whatever shape and you arrive at, that can be very easily made out of additive manufacturing. That's where this technology has making the best use of topology optimization. The second thing is using the lattice structure or the cellular structure. So lattice structure, and again, lattice structure is not a new thing, but the usage has been very, very limited because of the limitations of how to manufacture it. But with additive, it is really opened up, and then you can have a very high strength to weight ratio, can have a higher heat transfer, or you can even have a negative Poisson's ratio with the shapes and what you can arrive at. And you can also have the better acoustic properties. One of the example what I am showing here is a duct, the plain duct, which is also used as used to do the heat transfer. How that can be improved using these lattice structures? There are 3 structures which we took as an example, and then you can see that how the heat transfer rate can be increased, and at the same time keep the pressure drop at the minimum. So you can see that the yellow line, we are able to increase the heat transfer rate. At the same time, you are limiting the pressure drop. So we can do the iterations around these design iterations to get a better performance using these lattice structures. And I'm taking this heat transfer as an example, but it can be even used for many of the structural elements. The third thing is the part complexity, which you can incorporate into the design, eliminating the limitations what we are looking at when we are thinking of conventional manufacturing. The aerodynamic shape of any component can be further improved to get a better performance, or you can optimize on the weight by and then you can also embed the parts, especially some of the sensors that can be embedded into the surface while printing itself, and then we can that sensors will give either the pressure, the temperature parameters as it is operating, and conformal cooling we talked about. We can also add additional functions. If it is an aerodynamic part, airfoils, you can also use it as a structural component, or the combustors, the swirlers which are there. Apart from doing the turbulence levels, what you are looking at, you can also improve the pressure drop levels or heat dissipation. So you can introduce additional functionalities into the parts when you design it, and you can also have the functionally graded additive manufacturing materials which have the varying properties across the part. It could be by adding those, controlling the density and then the porosities, or it can be because of the structure itself, but you're able to achieve these varying properties across the part through the additive manufacturing. This is an area where a lot of research is happening today, and there are practical examples which are being done with additive. So that's the complexities what we can introduce. The part consolidation is another very good example how we can do. This is a fuel nozzle which GE developed for the GE9X engine as well as for the LEAP-X, in fact. This nozzle typically used to have 20 parts, and then it involves some of the welding, soldering which is involved, and then the assembly fixtures which are required to assemble these 20 parts together. But with additive manufacturing, we are able to convert this into one single assembly. And it has reduced some of the variations which could happen during the assembly, and it has increased the yield also for these parts. So this is a part which is there in the production today. So typically when you want to use additive manufacturing, you don't look at the part, you look at the complete assembly and then see how that can be put together. Similarly, this is a heat exchanger, which is an aluminum alloy part. So this is used to have 163 parts as part of this, but now we are able to make it out of one single assembly. So in fact, the part consolidation is a big benefit what is coming out of additive manufacturing, and you should consider it early in your design. The materials. Materials is an very, very important aspect of the design. We have a list of materials what we can do it out of additive manufacturing, both for the polymers or the composites or the metals. So knowing that, we can always select a material which we can adopt it using additive manufacturing. In fact, you can also have a multifunctional optimization of materials which can be achieved. And you can also look into the introducing the lattice porosities as part of this to arrive at the material properties what you are looking at. There are still some limitations. Every material cannot be printed using additive manufacturing. We need to understand that limitation and then decide the material and then get going with the additive. As part of the printing process, we talked about that support structures are not unavoidable. We cannot avoid it. So we need to decide on the orientation and then the way we print that part. And then maybe during the design itself, you look at how it can be printed with minimum supports. And these supports also do the other function of heat dissipation. So we still have to have the support so that enough heat dissipation still happens, so that we will not have those the thermal cracks induced as part of that thermal cycle which the part is subjected to while printing it. So we need to optimize on the support structure, and there are a lot of tools which are available today. Understanding the AM process, and then what can be achieved out of how the support structures can be optimized for a typical AM process. The other design improvement things is typically this is a very simple example, very easy to understand. So that's where I included this thing. Typically, if you have a flow duct, the T duct, with the conventional things, you will have a straight holes. But with additive manufacturing, you can have these curved holes which will have a smoother flow, and there are no sharp corners which are there. And then the circular holes can be converted into oblong holes, so that it is best suited for additive manufacturing. If it is a typical circular hole, you may have to have internal supports, whereas with these oblong holes, you don't need to have a support. So this is ideally suited for additive manufacturing. And if you print it the horizontal what it is shown, then we don't need any other support. So that way we can optimize the geometry and then optimize the way you print it to be best suited for additive manufacturing. This is another example of hydraulic manifold, how you would have done it normally with the conventional manufacturing and how we can do it out of additive manufacturing. You can see that more than 50% reduction in the weight what we can achieve, and at the same time we can get the lower pressure drops and then the smoother flows through the hydraulic manifolds. So these are the good examples of how we can optimize the design for additive manufacturing. There are certain things which is helping the supply chain. We talked about part consolidation, how the assembly time can be reduced, assembly fixtures can be reduced. I'd like to spend a little more time in the smaller production runs and then the turnaround time. This is one of the example in Honeywell we had. This is an engine which is made in 60s and 70s, the ATF engine. So the bearing housing, which is a cast part, that's what being done by one of our suppliers, and then he had those supply tools, and then that supplier wound his shop about 5-6 years back. We used to have a lot of difficulty in getting this part done because the casting tools are not available, and if you go to a new casting house, it will take another 2 or 3 years to certify that process and the tools and then get it done. So, and this is true with many of the aerospace things. Well, typically they have a very long life. This engine, which is done in 70s, it is still in service. We are not making new engines, but we need to support the existing things. There are still about 12 aircrafts in service, and then we need to provide that support. So finally, we could make this out of additive manufacturing, and then we could get it certified from the FAA authorities, and then we could implement it into the production line. So this is another good example where you did not make any design changes. It is the existing design, but we moved away from the casting process to the additive manufacturing process. Getting a FAA certification was a challenging, because they definitely will look into all the aspects, including all the material data which is required to get it going. So this is a good example how it helps the supply chain to improve it. So this is a typical DFAM approach based on the areas which I covered it. You look at it at the system level, not at the part level. And then you do the conceptual design at the system level, and then see how the parts can be consolidated, look at the boundaries which are required at the system level, and then decide on which is the end process which we can think about. Then you come to the part design, and then as part design, you make the conceptual design, look at the surrounding parts, whether that parts can be consolidated or not, do the initial analysis to make sure that we are able to meet all the loading conditions, the environment in which this part is going to operate, and then modify that to make it suitable for that, and then finalize the design. And then you see, now you start looking at the AM process, how it can be implemented. So the pre-processing which needs to be done, what should be the layer thickness, and then what's the support which is required to build this part, and then you do a simulation to make sure that the AM process is going to work, and then you are going to get the part printed right, and then finally get into the project. So this is a typical DFAM process which helps to make sure that the final design, what you are planning, will be to the requirements of the component. So a systematic approach to the DFAM, considering all the aspects, will help you in having a design which provides all the benefits in terms of performance, weight, cost, and easy to print. And we can also get the part if whatever certification and qualification which is required. So what are the challenges? The challenges is because it is layer by layer what we print this part, there is a minimum layer thickness what we can do. Typically the layer thickness varies from 20 microns to 80 microns depending on the complexity of the part what we want to achieve. So because of that, we still, what is the surface roughness what we can achieve, or some of the dimensional tolerance what we can do. So that is still limited. Either the diametrical or the linear tolerances what we can achieve is less than 50 microns is still difficult. So we may have to overcome that by doing some of the post-processing. So that's the technology-driven thing. The second thing is the build quality. The build quality, consistency of that, and is one thing which we have to establish so that it is acceptable to the applications what you are looking at. Aerospace may require very, very stringent requirement of these things. So because of the thermal cycles, what it is going through, there are a lot of residual stresses which are inherent, and that we have to relieve those stresses by going through a stress relieving process. We also have to ensure that there is a proper heating and cooling cycle which is followed so that there is no distortions or the thermal cracks which can be incorporated. So for most of the bigger parts, it's a process and a technology which has to be established to get to the finish what we want. Part size limitations is slowly getting overcome. Today we can print the part which has 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. That's the XYZ direction what we can print it. So that machine is today available. And in some cases, we can also build the parts in sectors, and then we can weld it and then use it. But still, we need to keep that as another constraint. And material constraints we talked about. So there are minimum post-processing required things which we have to go through. The stress relieving or the annealing is one of the process which has to be done. And especially if it is a highly loaded part, then the hipping process, which is a hot isostatic pressing process, is the one which is used to consolidate the parts and the minimize the porosities and other. So that's the process which typically is still being used, especially for the aerospace applications. And to get to the surface finish, what we want, the shot pinning or some of the chemical etching process to get to the finish what we want. And if the dimensional tolerance we are not able to achieve with direct printing, then it also requires some additional machining. So those are the things which we have to keep it in mind, that as AM, these are all the things which is required. And then when you do the cost evaluation to see whether AM is really cost effective or not, you have to look at it from end to end. Don't look at it only printing the part. You look at it right from getting the raw material to the finished part, what needs to be delivered to the customer. And in that complete supply chain, all the elements you have to consider to really say that whether additive manufacturing is cost effective or not. There are a lot of cost models which has been developed by many industries. And we have seen that if you consider end to end, there are quite a few cases where you feel that additive is definitely cost effective. So this is my last slide. What is the forward path for additive manufacturing? The industry started accepting, and in fact, it's been already in production, that 3D printing is a reliable manufacturing process. Maybe to get to the additional certifications, there are additional data what we need to furnish today. But slowly, once that standardization happens, even that data gets the minimum data we should be able to get certified. Designers should start looking at the DFAM, which I talked about, so that they get the best benefits out of additive. And in fact, that education to the students whom today we are talking to, they need to be aware of it, and then they need to get the maximum exposure on the areas how it can be done, so that the designers are fully ready. Then we need to have the necessary training for the workforce, which is very, very important. Today we feel that there is a gap what is being taught in the universities and then in the schools, but what the practical things which are happening. So that bridging needs to happen so that workforce is ready to be used by the industries. And once we have the skilled workforce, we definitely have more and more innovative products using additive manufacturing, which we could have never thought 5 years back or 10 years back. Those things can be implemented through the additive manufacturing. So that is where this technology is going to be in future. So with that, I come to the end of my talk. So if there are any questions, I don't know how much time we have, Srikanth or Muthu. So based on that, we can decide.
Thank you, sir, for a very informative presentation, especially highlighting on the opportunities available in this area, and also bringing about the importance of the design process required. So I request the participants to raise their queries or questions on this topic.
Sir, I am Professor Rajadurai, from Professor from MIT campus, Anna University. Basically, I am a metallurgist. So thank you for the wonderful lecture. All along, know this additive manufacturing, it comes in. Okay, so originally we thought it is a one type of only rapid prototyping, where you can make a kind of component as a showpiece to show to the customers and other thing. But whether it is possible to make a realistic product that could be used in the component where some amount of load and tax are being transmitted, that is always under question. And particularly conventional metallurgists like us, we strongly believe you have to minimize whenever you want to melt and resolidify. You melt a metal, particularly reactive materials such as aluminum, titanium, so they will have a hell lot of problem. So therefore, the property of the metallic substances depends upon the internal structure. So our worry is now how to now have a kind of a clean melt and then clean solidification, so that the component could be realized without loss in property. You may obtain required shape, required dimension, everything is possible. But I really wonder, by particular titanium and other things are highly reactive. So you need extreme care, very clean environment, evacuated conditions or inert conditions, which will add up to the cost. So therefore, larger scale manufacturing, whether it is still feasible for making metallic components, particularly reactive metallic components, that remains as a question for us. So therefore, we still believe, the additive manufacturing may be useful for polymeric components or non-reactive materials, but whereas metallic materials still, I believe, for large scale manufacturing, which will be put on into hold. This is my personal opinion. I kindly make a comment on that. Whether is there anything anywhere people know who use this right now for large scale manufacturing, particularly metallic materials?
Yeah, very valid questions. In fact, this is the question most of the material science people or the metallurgists ask. Do we how to get that confidence, because you are going through the melting process, and then the material properties what you get, and the microstructures what we get out of this is a very valid question, sir. In fact, that is where a lot of effort has gone through in making sure that the material what we do. In fact, that's where I moved on to this slide. In fact, you can see this slide, which is the titanium.
That's what I really wondered, how they could make a titanium 6L4V, and that too a kind of a very vital component like a compressor disk. So they are very vital, no? They are normally forged, heat treated, the microstructures are tailored to meet the requirement. But by simply, by kind of additive manufacturing, very difficult to achieve the required microstructure.
The concern is very true, sir.
Yes.
But what has happened in the last 4 or 5 years across the, in fact, this is a material which is very widely used in the aerospace industry. And this is the component which is made for HAL. Initially, it was thought about that we'll just use it like a prototype and then do all the functional test of this and all. But now this is going through the approval certification process. So the typical process what is followed here is, one is to establish the AM technology for this material. In fact, it goes through that material testing process. So we build the coupons, and then that coupon, of course, it depending on the orientation, the way it is built. We build it in horizontal, vertical, at an angle and all. And then we subject it to the could be a tensile coupon, or the fatigue coupon, or the creep. So we do a lot of material testing. There is a lot of material data which is already provided by the machine suppliers which we are using it. For example, the EOS or the concept guys, or even the Arcam which uses electron beam melting, they have already done quite a bit of material characterization on these parts. But we still have a doubt, because the powder from where we are getting it may not be the source of the powder may not be the same which the EOS or the concept have used. So we need to ensure that the source of the powder, and then the quality of the powder what you are getting is to the certain requirements. Then you build the coupon and then subject it to all these material testing. And then we also do at the coupon level some of the microstructural studies. So most of these studies which have done have shown that the property of this material with a typical bar stock what we use it is almost 10 to 15% better than that what we get it out of additive manufacturing. If it is forged, definitely will not get the to the level what it is required. It may be even 10-15% lower than the material properties of the forged alloy. The second thing what we do is the coupons are also printed in the same build platform where the actual part is built, so that the conditions, the environment in which the part is built is the same condition the coupons are also subjected to, and then we can subject the coupons to all the all the material testing as well as the microstructural studies which it is subjected to. So that gives that confidence that the part and the coupon which we are using to evaluate are to be subjected to the same process. The other next thing is the post processing which has to be done. Most of these things will definitely have it needs to go through a stress relieving process or some sort of an annealing or the heat treatment processes which is required to go through, and then we have to optimize on that that aspect of it. Today, most of these parts which are printed, they also go through the hipping process, so that we make sure that whether it is required or not, many of the certification agencies still have some uncertainties around the porosities which could be there and all. So we still go through that. So the confidence level of using this for the aerospace application today is very high. GE is using the titanium blades for their compressor even in the GE 9X engine today. So typically, similarly, the Pratt & Whitney has also been using these titanium alloys. Similarly, you can see that there are some of the aluminum alloys which are used for many of the pressurized housings and other things where it is being used. So the reactive materials has taken little more time compared to the other materials, but today it is a reality. So the reality is, yes, we can have a part which will meet all the certification qualification requirements and which can be produced consistently and reliably. So that is the today's situation of even building these reactive material parts.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
We have one more question from Dr. John from AMR. So he says, what is the future of AM in refractory materials like niobium alloys and ceramic materials such as silicon nitride?
Ceramic materials is definitely can be used. In fact, there are a lot of ceramic materials which are being evaluated today, and it's a real. It will maybe we didn't have so much of applications like what we had for the nickel alloys or the titanium alloys or aluminum alloys and all, but ceramic, there are a lot of work which is happening, and I feel maybe we need to have one good application where we can go through the complete process, and ceramics can definitely be used. The other niobium alloys and other things I have not heard actually being evaluated or not. Maybe the requirement and the applications are very, very minimum, I think. It's same as the case with the copper actually. Copper was 2 years back, never thought that copper can be printed. But there was a heat exchanger requirement which has come up, and I think the Objectify guys, so they spent a lot of good effort in making this entire heat exchanger out of copper and zirconium alloy. So it's become a reality. So we need that required. In fact, this is one area. Additive manufacturing is one area which is a multidisciplinary area where the different disciplines need to come together and then make it happen. And I'd say that niobium is one of such cases where some research, focused research needs to happen.
Thank you, sir. Are there any more questions from the participants?
Ramesh Babu, I just want to ask you one question. So,
This is Rajan.
yeah.
Vaman, thank you very much for your excellent presentation. I just want to know what is the quality assurance and quality control philosophy. I know you covered about the metallurgical quality side, but from mechanical point of view, even though there is no welding or anything, is there any NDT technology processes used in ensuring the reliability or integrity or quality of the final product, or similar technologies in the quality assurance of the final product through this technology? Thank you.
Very good. That's definitely a question which everybody will needs to make sure that it passes all the quality assurance. Typically today, especially if it is a critical part, it will go through the CT scan, sir. The CT scan is one good thing which will tell us about the any of the internal cracks or any of the porosities which could be there. Especially in Honeywell, the every part which is going through the production, it is being CT scanned today. It is little high. The investment and the cost involved is little high today because we need to get that confidence on the process. Maybe a part which is consistently produced for last 1 year or 2 years, then we can take a waiver of CT scan is not required. X-ray and CT scan are definitely done today to ensure that the quality is met. I also talked about the hipping process. There are a lot of research which is happening on the pros and cons of the hipping process. In fact, one of the study by MTU showed that hipping could be little harmful also. But I saw in one of the publications. So, but hipping, especially if it is having some sort of a fatigue life, needs to be established and other things. So, we still insist that hipping is required. Again, if it is not fatigue critical part, then we may not go through the hipping process. But from the quality point of view, the X-ray, CT scan, and those things are being followed 100% for most of the production parts.
Thank you, Oman. Thank you very much.
I have a question, Ramesh Babu. Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can hear.
Yeah. See, I think we have been talking about this CM over the last 3 decades. So one is the technological obsolescence of these products being manufactured by many is the one which has led to the poor usage of these things in many sectors. And second one is the quality consciousness, of people about the quality of the products, which our Professor Rajendra also has highlighted it. So in the current scenario of this technology being developed so well, and why people are still hesitating to go in for additive manufactured parts? Can you just give your views on that?
Yes, sir. Maybe other people, if they have industry experience, they can also add. But what I see is the hesitancy is the way it is being manufactured, that process itself, the consistency and the reliability of that is one which needs to be established. What I heard is when the casting came into existence, maybe some 60, 70 years back, a similar question was asked even for the casting process regarding the quality of the casting, what can be produced. And good thing is a lot of industry standardization which has happened, and a lot of data sharing which happened across. In the additive manufacturing, one of the drawbacks what I see is there is still not enough standardization which has happened. Although there is an ASTM standard which is coming, but especially from the converting from the raw material, from the powder to the finished product. It goes through that multiple phases. So the data sharing and information sharing has not happened so much. Honeywell, for example, I'll just Inconel 718 is a material which was the first material which Honeywell wanted to use it for the production part to certify it. The machine manufacturers have already given all the process parameters for the Inconel 718, but the source of the powder, when we wanted to get it from the machine supplier, they were not ready to give it because they wanted to. They're insisting that you buy the powder from us and then we will provide. So, but whereas we wanted to get to the source from where actually typically the atomization process which is followed to get to the powder shape and size what we want, and it starts from there, and we have to completely do all the tests. A lot of time and effort was spent to really characterize the Inconel 718 material. And since Honeywell did it, Honeywell doesn't want to share that information with any other standardization agencies. Same thing is true with GE or with Airbus or with Pratt & Whitney and all. So till that process standardization happens, acceptance by the industry is going to take little time. In India, I think there is a National Additive Manufacturing Center which is trying to consolidate all these informations and then make it available to the certificate agencies like DGCA or the CEMILAC. And recently I was part of one of the review committee where GTRE wanted one of their impeller part for the production level, take it to the certification route. But same question which CEMILAC was asking, that we need to have the enough traceability to do it. So the GTRE is now repeating all the tests. This is an aluminum alloy what they are talking about. They have to repeat all the tests and spending almost 1 year full time to do all the tests and gather the data and then give it to the certificate agency to do it. So that is one of the things. The non-aerospace and the non-space where the questions which are asked is a little less, but it has to have the right volume to do it. If the volumes are very high and then the parts are not very complex, then additive may not be cost effective. So then they try to use it only for the prototype, but not the production parts. So I will say that the three things needs to happen to for everybody to adopt this technology. One is the cost of the machine itself. The cost of the machine needs to come down. So there is enough research which is happening in the country. In fact, the iFusion SF1 machine, which is being done by Intech DMLS, it almost costs 50% than the imported machine, what it costs. But still people need to get that confidence on the quality of parts, what it can develop. So there is always that question which is being asked. And the second one is the cost of the powder or the raw material, which is the second one. Which today there are effort which is going on in the country on the powder production and all, but it is very, very limited, and most of the people still import this material. And the third one I told you about the standardization things which is required. So then there will be better adoption by the industries.
Yeah, I think second one is many machine tool industries initially attempted to develop those AM machines, but even those like AC is one of them, and then of course Intech is doing something, RI is working on the materials, etc.
Yeah.
So, but then there is a lot of hesitancy, even though the top is encouraging them to build this AM machines with the software, etc. So how do we break this and then make this happen? These AM technologies, penetrate into the sectors.
I think a lot of awareness needs to happen, sir. In fact, from the the right question which Professor Rajdurai asked regarding the inert material, whether it will have the microstructure or the strength and the properties and all. So the amount of data which is available today may not be, people may not be aware and how much it has happened. So I definitely feel that it can happen only by more and more people who have been in this field. They talk to the industries, and then if they still have the questions, how that can be answered with the data. See, if just making a statement without any data will not give that confidence. But I'm sure that there is a lot of data which is available, which can be used to build that confidence. So that's what I see, that's one of the things which NF has not happened. We only talk about at the high level, top level, but going to the depth of it and then sharing that information is very, very important.
No, thank you. I think we can just discuss.
Thank
more
you, sir.
about
That's what we normally used to say. Only mechanical engineer, they see the superficial property. They see only the size and the shape. But the metallurgist only see the soul of the material. We see inside the material and look
Correct.
for the internal conformity. So
Yeah.
therefore, really, this process is very good for getting the external, features. Shape and size could be obtained with effectively, but the internal microstructure, particularly for reactive material, a lot of research to be done. We really understand that, sir. But very good lecture. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vaman. I think it's really an excellent thing. Okay. So maybe Srikanth, if they have
There are no more questions, sir. So
no more questions, I think our John was raising a opinion is hesitancy to employ the AM is due to non-consistency in the product as it involves many parameters that influence the process. Some parts with more porosity and some with less porosity. So,
sir, your voice is not so audible. Please, sir.
Yeah. I think there were John was making a comment on the process. Maybe Srikanth, you can read out.
yeah, he said
I got it, Srikanth. In fact, I think that is the consistency and the reliability.
Yeah.
How to make sure that, let us say that if you make 100 parts, every part will have the same consistency, and so in fact that's a real concern based on what physically some people have seen and then observed it. And most of that, I will say that the process of completely building that part, right from the source of the raw material to the converting it to finished part, that complete process, there could be somewhere it is broken. So then these things is definitely will happen. We were also facing a similar problem. I will say that about 5 years back or 6 years back. 6 years back, the part, one of the example was the fuel restrictor actually. So we were able to build it successfully here in Bangalore, and the same design, when we give it to our friends in US, in Phoenix, they were not able to build it successfully. So we gave them the entire process parameters, everything, but they used to see that they were having some difficulties. So it was a real question to see that how that can be answered. So then we see that there is a machine-to-machine variations which could be there. So how to eliminate that machine-to-machine variation? So we really have to arrive at a process of calibrating the machine to the same level what is required, including the calibrating the laser which is being used. So after we did that, we found out that yes, we are even in the US we are able to do it. So then we standardize that machine calibration process also, because we are using the same raw material and we are using the same pre-processing and we are building the parts, but we still see that there are the variations which are happening. So I agree that the parameters which are involved here is very large. Then we have to drill it down to see that, to eliminate all that variations which could be there. and with that we are able to standardize the thing. So in some cases we may do that initial entire process development, and then because we don't have enough capacity to build the production parts, we outsource it in another supplier, and the supplier does the production of these parts using the same. We share the entire process what needs to be followed, including the source of the raw material, everything, but the machine needs to be calibrated and then it. So I feel that whatever problems which we had seen about 4 to 5 years back, most of that things have been ironed out, and today we feel that we are in a much better position to have the consistency and then the reliability of the parts what are being built.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. No. Yeah. So I think we can conclude Srikanth. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for a very enriching presentation on the additive manufacturing and its adoption in the different industrial sector and how they can further be used. I think with the availability of the smaller plastic-oriented machines that are desktop machines that are available, I think the students can easily use them and then explore themselves the power of additive manufacturing. So with that words, so I thank once again Sri Vaman Kulkarni sir for a wonderful presentation. And
thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks for
you.
giving this opportunity. So
Yeah.
it's nice sharing some of the information, and maybe certain things is also a new learning for me. So
Yeah.
it's a continuous process of learning. Thanks everybody. Thanks Professor Ramesh Babu.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we'll let us see whether we can build something, together now with your experience.
Definitely, sir. Definitely.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
thank you.
Thank you.
sir.
Thanks
you.
everybody.
Good night, sir. Good night.
Yeah. Bye bye.